remember who Jesus is this morning, you guys may have your seat, but stay with me, Tim. Stay with me for a minute. So we're starting a brand new 2-week mini-series today called Simple. Simple. And yesterday I get a text from our man Jordan. He's back there in the booth. Jordan is going to be offended that I even said his name into the microphone. But Jordan is a behind-the-scenes type of dude, and he does so much. I'm so appreciative of you, Jordan, because I don't know anything about what happens on a Sunday morning in terms of outside of speaking into a microphone. It all happens because of the people in that booth right now. And so I appreciate you. But Jordan texted me. He texted me yesterday and he said this graphic that Cody designed on the background, he was concerned that you wouldn't be able to see it because of the way that our screens are designed. So he sends me this text yesterday. And as I'm looking at it, I actually get this revelation of, no, I want that exactly like this, because I think this graphic on this screen exemplifies everything that I'm going to try and say today. Because you can see the word simple, and if you didn't, you now see it that we pointed it out. But there's a lot going on with these screens and how they're connected, and the lines and the black lines and black on white and white on black and all this stuff, and it can be very distracting if you struggle with ADD. It can't necessarily be simple to see because it's like white on white. And the purpose of this series that we're talking about is recognizing that Jesus is simple, but faith in Jesus is very complex. Your journey with Jesus can oftentimes look like this screen, is there's a lot of things going on in your life that is competing for your attention and for your time. And sometimes we can get so busy with good things that we forget the simple things in life, the simplicity of Jesus. Because if you're like me in this season, this past couple weeks have not been simple. Okay, kids are back in school. I got 3 kids now, 2 of them in school. I got a first grader and a second grader in school, and the routine of figuring out kids in school is crazy. Then if you know our story, we have a 13-week-old at home, so newborn life is not simple. My wife started a brand new job at Charlestown High School, and she's now in the counseling field, and so she's got a lot of stuff going on in her life, and her job is not simple. And then it affects our marriage because I'm running around chaotic, she's running around chaotic. We're trying to raise 3 kids in a simple home, but it's not so simple. And people have opinions about you, and you have opinions about you. And you know that there's this, tension that you want to have a healthy marriage, but when you get home, you're both so exhausted. How can you even have a healthy marriage when you don't really even want to talk to each other? And it's not because you don't want to talk to each other, it's because you're so talked out the whole day that when you get to your safe person, it's sometimes I just need to be in your presence. I don't need to talk to you. Okay, that was my wife that said that, and if you don't know that, she's the male in our relationship and I'm the female. I want to talk about our feelings all the time. So I'm very insecure by that, amen. There's so much you have to balance in life, and simplicity is not how I would describe my walk with Jesus. And so I thought it would be a perfect reminder this week and next week to just sit in the simplicity of Jesus, even though there's a lot of complex things about scriptures and faith and relationships. May we be reminded that he's simple and that his love is for you. Tim, I love hearing that piano. I could make you stand up here with me this whole morning, but I'm gonna let you be good. Can we give it up for Tim, especially our worship team? Thank you, Tim. Thank you. That is amazing. Proverbs 14:30 is a scripture that I'm going to use this week and next week. Proverbs are great. There's a lot of great words of wisdom throughout the book of Proverbs. There's also a lot of things that depending on who the author is in the book of Proverbs, that they wrote based on their emotion in a season, and it wasn't necessarily fact or true. But Proverbs 14:30 is a good one. It says this: a heart at peace gives life to the body, but envy rots the bones. And when my wife and I, when we were living in our second home, when we bought both of our homes, we walked into every single room and we prayed over every room that our house, no matter who walked in or what they walked in with, is that they would just sense this overwhelming peace when they walked into our home. It's kind of the people that we want to be. We want to just be those safety nets for people, that they just experience peace in the midst of their chaos. In fact, this is something that I have to do every single day. My wife doesn't know this, but when I get home, I sit in my car for like 3 minutes because I'm prepping myself to enter. Because depending on my day, there's stress, there's anti-peace that I could be bringing into my home, and I just take these 3 minutes to just be like, okay, I had a lot of stuff going on, and I want my kids' first impression with dad on any given day is peace and excitement and fun, even if my day wasn't those things. And that's not being fake, that's being faithful. And so peace is one of these things that we can allow to sway in our life if we're not careful, when we forget to recognize that Jesus is the Prince of Peace and he permanently resides in you and I. And so we should be carriers of peace. And envy in all kinds of different things. This isn't just about finances, but envy will rot you from the inside out if you're not careful. And so, real simple, I was trying to come up with like my inner Shannick to preach this sermon about coming up with an acronym. You know, we do this every now and then. And I had like the BLT of Christianity. I was going to have a bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwich up here on stage, and I was going to eat it to make you guys all feel real hungry while I'm trying to preach. And I was like, that wouldn't be a really good illustration, because then people will be thinking about food while I'm trying to challenge us around this idea about simplicity. And so then I thought up of this acronym for TLC, right? But then I recognize that your mind's going to go to one of three things. Either you're a TLC fan of the network channel because you just love your TLC. Maybe you are thinking about waterfalls. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Please stick to the river and the lakes. When I don't remember lyrics, I hum. Maybe you're thinking about the sermon series that we did on relationships last fall called Tender Love and Care. Maybe you're just thinking about tender love and care. Well, this morning I got the TLC for you: to live simply with Jesus. You ready for this? It's going to be simple, but it's going to be complex. Stay with me, okay? TLC, the T stands for trust. And I know we're in a church setting, so please don't be offended if you're an uber Christian in this place, but I'm not necessarily talking about trust in God. Obviously, we could point out Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, acknowledge him in all your ways and he will make your path straight, and that's good and that's true. But if you're around Christians long enough, they'll use that Christian jargon and it's not helpful. You know when you're going through hell or you're going through a circumstance, and then you have that one super Christian friend that goes, oh, come on, brother, just trust in Jesus. And you're like, I'm trying to, but I'm struggling. I don't need to be told, trust in Jesus. I'm working on that. But when I talk about trust, I'm not just talking about trust in Jesus. I'm talking about trusting in the process. The process of your faith, the process of your doubt, the process and season of whatever life that you're in right now. So many times we strive to get out of the season or to avoid some of the pain and circumstances that we have in our lives, and we don't realize that those pain and circumstances are helping us prepare for the next season of pain and circumstance that will come into our life, because you're guaranteed in life to deal with pain. In fact, I was talking to my good friend Cody this past week, and he said this. It was very interesting. He said, we have to be better in the church at not telling people, if they don't believe our specific version of faith, that they aren't true Christians. You see, depending on what type of Christians you do life with, every type of Christian is guilty of believing that they're right in every doctrine, theology, and conversation around God and the Bible and the church. This is why we have thousands of denominations, and we all believe that we're right in how we process God. And I want to be real clear this morning that this church is a safe church for people to explore faith. faith, because it's not so simple. We have to be very careful that we don't go around telling people that if they don't believe exactly like us, or if they have a different view politically, or if they are struggling with some type of doctrine, we have to be very careful that we are not dogmatic in our approach to faith, because we have to recognize that we have biases too. I went to Liberty University, a Christian university. And there's this type of theology called eschatology. It's the study of the end times. And I was taught one specific view at Liberty University. And I'm not blaming Liberty University. I don't believe it's their fault. But when I graduated seminary, I thought there was one view around the discussion of eschatology. So therefore, I would dogmatically tell people that they had to line up with my belief. It wasn't until I started studying this 10 years after I graduated seminary to realize that there are actually 4 accepted views on eschatology in academia. And they all differ. And so if we're not careful, because of the people that we sit under, or because of the teachings that we sit under, we believe that they're always teaching the truth. And I'm going to tell you, as someone who communicates for a living, I try to be truthful, but there are some things that sometimes I preach that aren't necessarily truth. It's because I was taught certain things about faith through a specific lens, and that's now how I see things, and that's now how I argue. And if I'm not careful, I will enter conversations that are really helpful for my faith and growth. I'll enter them dogmatically, and I will turn off every single person in the conversation. Because when have you ever been changed around faith conversations when someone has been dogmatic with you? So why are we being dogmatic with people? Guys, this walk with Jesus is actually simple. The simplicity of Jesus is to love as Christ has loved us. That is it. Now, it is complex in how we do that, because you recognize that you've got to love Aunt Susie Joe, who you don't like. And if your aunt's name is Susie Joe, I'm not talking about you. I was just trying to think of any type of name I could throw out there. We have to be better at trusting our process and trusting our faith experiences, because the goal isn't to get you to skip so many letters. Our goal is to take the baby steps to the next letter in season of life. Trust. I love how even Paul said this throughout his presentations of the gospel. He told Timothy, he told this to the church in Corinth. He would constantly talk about this idea that while we remain faithless, God is always faithful. I think that can be encouraging as we discover the different doubts that we have about faith, as we process through what it is we believe. I think it's really important for us to be curious. Uncertain. Because if something was certain, it no longer requires faith. There's a lot of irony when Christians get really certain about the things they believe. Trust. The L stands for love, and they go hand in hand. Again, this is the true gospel, is loving people who don't think like us, loving people who don't live like us, loving people, all people, without telling them that we hate the sin but love the sinner. That's not helpful. Our job isn't to be the sinner police. Our job is to be the love police, and loving people even that we feel don't deserve it. And this is what's amazing and attractive. In fact, a couple years ago, I started shifting everything that I did in ministry and life. So I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, if you're an Enneagram person. And so I love to accomplish, I love to achieve, I love to do. I have to-do lists for my to-do lists, and I like going through them every single week and rearranging them. I'll spend hours rearranging my to-do list while I don't accomplish my to-do list, but I'll feel like I'm accomplished. Yeah, I'm crazy. And what happens is as I love to accomplish these things, because it makes me feel good, I get a hit of dopamine when I get to, click on that little check mark. Oh, I feel good. But I started to shift, and I started to ask myself this question. This might be a good question for you. In everything that I do, whether in my marriage, in my parenting, in my friendships, in my relationship, whatever I do for church ministry, I ask myself this question: am I building something beautiful? Am I building something beautiful? Because when we talk about attractiveness, the gospel is beautiful. And so if we're going to be a part of something that is Christ-like, the simplicity of Jesus, then we have to be building stuff that is beautiful, because things that are beautiful are attractive, and people that see stuff that is attractive want to be a part. And so are you building something beautiful around Jesus? Are you building something beautiful with your life? Does your marriage look beautiful? Does your parenting look beautiful? Does your way that you work and lead in your job, is it beautiful? The way you co-work, is it beautiful? I hope that challenges you on a real and deep level, because I think it's very simple. Yes, it's complex, but it's simple. Are you building something beautiful? Because I think it's impossible to be faithful to God when you're unsure about how he feels about his children. The message and true gospel of Jesus is love. And I'm in the church world, so I see all the good, the bad, the ugly. There's this famous painting. Have you seen this famous painting? It's Jesus knocking on a door. Super famous. I think it was made in like the 15th or 16th century. So Jesus is knocking on the door, and because of the internet, the great internet, there's been a lot of memes that have been made about this painting. There's also a lot of sermons that are preached on this painting, and Pastor Shanek brought this out a couple years ago. It was a great revelation. I'd never heard of it. I'd never thought about it, because the reality is when we talk about Jesus knocking on the door, especially in the church world, we always are told, at least I was always told, that this is Jesus knocking on the door of your heart and he wants to be let in. The problem with that is the passage of scripture that talks about Jesus knocking on the door is found in the book of Revelation, and John is talking to the church, a room full of believers. And Shanek points out, he says, maybe it's not Jesus knocking on the door of your heart trying to get in. Maybe it's Jesus knocking on the door of your heart trying to get out. So there's this meme that's going around of Jesus knocking on this door, and I'm going to share it for you. And this is the gospel presentation that I heard growing up, okay? I hope you catch it, okay? Here's Jesus. Hey, let me in. Why? Because I love you and I need to save you. Save me from what? From what I'm going to do to you if you don't let me in. The people that are laughing have grown up in the church. And you might think it's funny. Maybe you've never critically thought about that gospel presentation. And maybe they don't say it quite like that because God is love. So you got to paint it a little bit prettier than that. But if you've been scared in the arms of a loving God through the doctrine of hell, then it's not God that you found, because that's not a choice. God is a God of love, and he doesn't need to scare his children into his arms. He's been permanently holding on to you, and you need to wake up to the reality that you have always been good enough in his view. In fact, someone posted this video, and I got triggered. I get triggered around terrible Christian teaching. There was this woman that was teaching. She's a real famous lady. She just wrote a book called You're Not Good Enough. And maybe that's okay. And I hate that thought process. And then they'll call and tell me, because I preach the opposite, that I'm a narcissist for believing that I am good enough. But the reason for why I believe that I'm good enough isn't because what I have to offer. It's because of what Jesus already offered 2,000 years ago to make humanity good enough. And maybe people are walking around with this complexity that life isn't that simple because they've been told they're not good enough their whole lives, and they haven't actually been told the true gospel. Because the gospel literally means the good news. And so if good news has a little bit of bad news in it, it's no longer good news. And maybe, just maybe, Jesus is as simple as the gospel presents him to be. And maybe he has always been love and loving towards you in every area of your life. The last one is this. See, Tim, you probably could have stayed with me. Tim, if you're listening, come help me close. I'm going to close this plane. Close this plane. That doesn't make sense. C, TLC, trust, love. The C is contentment. Contentment is so easy to talk about and so hard to live in. But I think this is the secret to a simple life. And I just stole that from Paul, who wrote about that. In fact, Luke 12:15 says this, put this up on the screen. Jesus speaking, he said, "Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." That Greek word for the word greed there literally means to be covetous or to desire for advantage, which means it's not always talking about money. We always hear scriptures like this. You know, we just talked about finances 2 weeks ago. We always associate greed with money, but did you know that there are actually 4 different types of greed presented in the Bible? They are hoarding, comparison, entitlement, and overspending. And we like to focus on the overspending aspect, but there's 3 other parts biblically that address greed in our lives. And if we aren't careful, these 3, I think, are what many of us struggle with the most because they're hidden. No one has to know that you struggle with comparison, because comparison usually only happens in your mind. No one really has to know that you're hoarding until you pass away. That's a funny joke. I don't know if you've ever walked into somebody's house that passed away and you realized for the first time that they're hoarders. That ain't pretty. Entitlement? Man, if I could preach on one thing that could condemn everybody, and I'm not a condemning type of preacher, it'd be on entitlement. I heard a story about the prodigal son. You know, the prodigal son, the one kid goes off, lives crazy, comes back. The father runs to him, hugs him, invites him, kills the big calf. They have a big party, and it's the older son who's out in the field complaining, and his whole ideology is like, "Dad, I never left you, and I was always faithful." And the crazy part about the scripture is it's the only time where the prodigal father ran out to his kid to go get him to bring him back. He didn't run for the first one. It's almost as if when we think about Jesus leaving the 99 sheep to run after the one, I've always associated that one with the person that was living crazy. What if the image of the prodigal son tells us exactly who the one is that Jesus runs after with the sheep illustration? What if the one is the entitled? What if the one is the Christian who's gone to church their whole life and feels like they're better than other people because they've done exactly what they're supposed to be doing? What if entitlement, especially in the church world, has robbed us from teaching Jesus simply? Contentment. The Apostle Paul picked up on this in Philippians chapter 4. I was meeting with a student. I'm not going to say his name because I don't want to embarrass him. But Cam and I were meeting, talking about Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. One of those verses that gets shared out of context all the time. And if you want to take it out of context, knock yourself out. Steph Curry took it out of context and made millions off of Philippians 4:13, okay? It says, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." The problem is that's not actually what it says. I'll read the whole context for you. Philippians chapter 4, verse 11, it's Paul speaking. He says, "I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want." And here's Philippians 4, verse 13. "I can do all this through him who gives me strength." It was really cool to watch Cam go back and study this on his own, because the following week he came back after I told him, "Hey, why don't you read the whole chapter, maybe even the whole book. It's only 4 chapters. Read the whole book to get the context of what Paul was trying to tell the church in Philippi." And he came back on his own without any help, and he goes, "Wow, I didn't realize that Philippians 4:13, the secret that Paul was talking about has to do with contentment. I can be content in all things through Christ who gives me strength." That's not "I can do all things," because you can't do all things. You're not even supposed to do all things. If you could do all things, you'd be God. But what if contentment was the one key that we needed to unlock a simple life? Not an easy life, but a simple life. And if you get around people who are really good with words, like myself, you'll hear people say, "Yeah, but you have to be content without being complacent." And that's a true statement, and it's a good statement. The problem is people like me who use it and say it don't have a problem with being complacent because we're workaholics. What we have a problem with is we have a problem with being content. And so we use this phrase as an excuse to never actually be content because we're trying not to be complacent because we're doers. What would happen in our lives if we began to shift to be content? Content in your season, content in your walk with God, content with where you're at on the way to where you're going. Content. In fact, at this church, we believe in connection. And we believe that connection is one of the biggest pieces to actually truly embracing the TLC. Trust, love, contentment, because you need other people to help you in your process. You need other people to remind you that you're loved and there's really nothing you can do about it. You need people in your life to remind you of contentment, and that our job as Christians to be simple is to really just align our lives with being content. So I'm actually going to call Pastor Stanek to come up here and help me close this sermon, because we haven't been able to do life groups, connect groups as a church really since COVID. We kind of took a 2-year break. We're kind of really frustrated figuring out, okay, how can we connect people to life in Jesus and to life with each other within our church? Because we've really struggled with this. We've had lots of conversations. What kind of small groups do we offer? Do we offer biblical ones? Do we offer, Bible studies? Do we offer topical? Do we talk about the sermon series? Do we do whatever? And so you should have gotten a piece of paper as you came in, and this is kind of what we're gonna do. I'm gonna let Pastor Shannon kind of explain exactly what we mean by this, but we're gonna try and launch connect group, life groups like we've never launched before in this church. And we really want you to be a part, even if it might be awkward for a moment, because connection is what helps you grow. Connection is what helps you flourish. Connection is what helps you remember that Jesus is simple. So come on up here. What are we doing?
Yeah, well, can we just give it up for Corey? Man, just that explanation of simple life. Man, I needed to hear that. And I don't know about you, I never actually had that revelation that the Father actually does go after the older son, but not the younger one. So that was so good. But yeah, we here at Hill City exist to connect people to life. You heard me share 4 weeks ago that the next season of ministry here and what I want to focus on is really having this connection piece where we as the family connect over whatever it is that gives us life. We don't want connection to be something out of obligation. We want it to be life-giving. And so the reason why I've had such a struggle over the last few months figuring out what this is going to look like is because a lot of the things that I was thinking really wasn't something that would lead to life. And I don't want to just cast vision and have it be some obligation. I really do want it to actually align with our core value, in that we do not do life alone. We do it in community, right? Life happens in community. And so instead of putting together things that maybe I or Pastor Corey think are great things for you to be involved in, or great things for you to learn, and here's the lessons, here's the teaching, here's what we want you to study and do in your groups, we thought, man, it would be amazing if we actually had life groups that were life-giving around the idea of whatever people are already doing in their life and in their daily or weekly routines. We don't just want to add something else just to your schedule to check off, but we want to allow opportunity for you to connect with things you're already interested in and things that you already might be doing. And so we have these little cards. We'll probably talk about it over the next few weeks. But basically, we're just asking for simple things like contact information. But we made a list of about 20 different things that people might be interested in. And you'll go down through the list, and like the second one there is bowling. Well, we put that down because we know, and there's Mike back there, we already know that dude loves to bowl. Matter of fact, he was getting together every week, and a few people from Hill City were coming out several years ago before COVID, and they were just connecting every single week already over bowling. And I actually talked to, I think, Reese and a few people that will go down. They're like, man, we had more conversations over bowling about Jesus than I ever did on a Sunday morning walking in and out the doors. And so these are the things that we think that really work allowing opportunity for us to connect. And so there's a list of 20 things. We're just going to ask, hey, are you interested in any of these things? Because we think we have an idea that there could be some people that could lead these groups, and they can meet weekly, it could be bi-weekly. At a minimum, maybe it's some of these groups just meet once a month. And so if you are interested in any of these things, write them down. We also have a line for other suggestions. Maybe there's something you're doing in your weekly life. Maybe you guys are already like walking, around the block, or you get together at the park and you play tennis, or you doing something active, or maybe you get together and having a book club already, or something maybe that is not on the list. We want you to put that suggestion down. And then the last thing is, and this is very important, the last question on the page says, are you interested in leading one of these? And so if you're already doing this and would love other people to come alongside you in what you're doing, we would love for you to just check that yes box, and then we will reach out to you. We're going to be all month long trying to figure out how to coordinate these events, how to put them up on our website as we get leaders plugged into these things. And then that'll be something that we offer to the community and to people that want to plug into this place outside of a Sunday, because Sunday's great and it'll always be a part of what we do, but it's not the pinnacle of what we do, because we believe that Sunday morning really is to encourage us for our Monday through Saturday, because that's where a lot of life happens. And we want you to have those connections and people that you can reach out to, that you could also use your gift. And I've said this for years, small groups, life groups, connections in homes is the greatest way that the body of Christ can actually use the spiritual gift that God gave them. And we want you to be active in that. And so if you would please, before you leave today, just take just a minute or two, fill this out. If you're wanting to lead one, please check the yes box. And then as you leave today, you can actually drop these off in the offering baskets. They are out on the welcome desk in the lobby, and I would really, really appreciate it. And again, this is for those of you looking for connection. Maybe you're already doing something, a group's full that you got going on, that's fine, and we love that you're connected. But for those of you that really want connection, and I've talked to a lot of you out there, man, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for us this fall to move in to life groups here at Hill City.
Is that good? You guys take advantage of that. So we'll have these signups over the next several weeks. And hopefully by the second week of September, we have a little bit more clarity, a little bit more vision of how we're going to do this. We'll have some signups. If you put down this and you're the only one, like there's a chance that you pick 3 things that no one else in this church wants to do. We will have some signups for you if you want to join a different group and whatnot. And so this is really a cool opportunity. I get it. Connect groups, life groups, they can be awkward at first. You can be intimidated by, oh man, what are these people? Trust me. I believe that this is how churches grow. I believe that this is how churches flourish. I believe that this is how faith grows, is by getting a little uncomfortable to build some relationships with people who might become your best friends. Or they might become people that you realize, I want to sit on the opposite side of the church from them every week. And that's okay too. We'll help you find your people as we do life together. Cool, take advantage of this, fill this out. Remember, we're having pop-up Sunday right here in the lobby. If you don't have any place to go to right away, why don't you hang out for a little bit, watch these kids. Hopefully someone falls off the trampoline. Hopefully stuff goes everywhere and it's a big mess for Marty to clean up. Just kidding, because we're gonna help him. Are you guys good with that? We good? You guys good Sunday? All right, well, you're loved and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. We'll see you in the lobby. We'll see you next week.